festivals, they would have different colored beads on their malas. One color meant you had a disease. And there was a lot of those colored beads because once it gets on the ranch, it spreads like a plague. At first, they tried to hide the homosexuality. You know, they were told to knock it off. It wasn't proper. And then Sheila has announced that it's fine. They have homosexuals on the ranch, and both men and women. But in the beginning, when they were trying to impress people, they hid it.
Rajneesh has predicted that 2/3 of the world's population will perish from AIDS because the seething sexual pot at the ranch could easily become a focus of the disease. The ashram has decreed that all sexual contact be protected by these rubber gloves and condoms. For many of the children at the ashram, it will be too little, too late.
I am very concerned about the abuse of children at Rajneesh Puram. For instance, the young girls who are encouraged to get sterilizations is a very exploitative, abusive practice.
Some of the girls that were in between 13 and 15 years old, Sheila would ask them if they would please be sterilized because they were more susceptible to sex. A lot of the girls would be called in from work to be fit for a diaphragm. And like Kiana's 10 years old, she had one. Sanal, who's 13, had one.
Their sex with the younger children is, one case in particular was a girl who was 13 years old. She had slept with guys, one was 45, one was 32. And one of the guys said she wasn't bad for a little kid, you know. She wasn't bad for a little kid.
In 1982, the Rajneeshis staged their first annual world celebration. With the crowds came the first signs of anxiety. Steve Sobel was hired to provide a security force of trained experts.
They wanted the show of force so that anyone who had the idea that possibly assassinate Bhagwan or do harm to him would not think about it so readily if he saw the weapons that we had.
Rajneesh already had trained bodyguards brought from India.
Most of them are what's called samurais, and they've been trained in martial arts to kill people with their bare hands.
Protection for Rajneesh was not the only thing Sobel's men were asked to provide.
They definitely were very interested when I was there in the use and the tactical use of instinctive shooting, of certain things that one learns in the military.
Was the Rajneesh hierarchy looking toward the future? In 1984, Dave Frohnmeyer, Oregon's Attorney General, filed a lawsuit against the city of Rajneesh Puram for violation of Oregon laws calling for separation of church and state.
If a religious corporation in a commune control all of the property of a city, and they control access to residency in the city, even if they allow non-residents in, it is a church that's saying when and under what conditions a person from the outside can be there or not.
In order to prepare for the coming confrontation with the government and secure the borders of their developing separate state, the Rajneeshis developed a clever, if not cynical, plan. Thousands of the nation's human derelicts, the unemployed, the unwashed, and the uncontrollable, from every major city were being transported to Rajneesh Puram. They would arrive in time to register and vote the Rajneeshi line in the elections. At first, the ashram denied the takeover plot.
I didn't even had a thought occur to me that they can vote or anything to do with voting.
I have no interest in any elections, and I'm not interested in the county either.
Later, they would change their story.
If it's necessary for our peace, for our safety, for our survival, to take over the county government of this county, then of course we'll do it.
I tell you, the county is so f***ing bigoted, it deserves to be taken over.
With tensions growing, the Rajneeshis have received threatening letters and phone calls, but they've made threats of their own.
We don't turn the other cheek. I would suggest that someone really check it out before they make any attempt, because they'll find that they may have their own life in danger.
Krishna Deva's tough talk may be more for the benefit of uneasy sannyasins than for outside enemies. In the commune, doubts seem to be growing daily. Like those who chose to follow Hitler and Jones, the Rajneeshis have surrendered their identities and their judgment to the master. All they have left is a deep emotional identification with Rajneesh and the commune. When the commune appears strong, their master appears omnipotent, their surrender justified. But as time goes by, more and more ex-sannyasins are coming forward with ugly revelations of abuse, suffering, and crime. The vision of paradise is melting away, and with it, the credibility of the master. The Rajneeshis are being faced with the terrible possibility that they have sacrificed their lives, their careers, and their children for the empty promises of a clever opportunist. Like Hitler and Jones, ashram leaders have begun to use fear and hate to unify their people. Of Hitler, an admiring Rajneesh has said,
he writes in his autobiography, Mein Kampf, that people are not united because of love. Love has no power. All power comes through hatred. Create hatred and they will become united. And I can fully understand his insight.
In a world well acquainted with the rhetoric of religious terrorism, the Guru's words have a familiar ring.
They have a paramilitary preparation that is frightening. The residents living at Rajneeshpuram are made to believe that these maniacs on the outside are going to besiege them.
We're not creating the Jonestown here, you're creating the Jonestown. And I tell you, we'll be happy to die with your bullets in us, and we'll die in Rajneesh Mandir.
Okay. And don't you ask me any more question about gun anymore. Unless you're ready to do something about it, don't ask me.
But turning the other cheek is not the Rajneesh way.
The most fundamental rule of this violent life is all means are good if they fulfill the end. And of course, rather than arguing, it is better to pull the sword. It decides things immediately. It is easier to fight with a person and decide who is right. Might is right. That rule still remains, the rule of the jungle.
They definitely are dangerous. And the reason I say that is their leadership is unstable. And Sheila, as intelligent as she is run purely by emotions. She flies off the handle, she gets irate. What would happen if you put an Uzi or an AR-15 in her hand? Would she use it? I believe she would. I believe she'd blow you away in a heartbeat.
Federal and state lawmen move ahead with their investigations. In Wasco County, secret grand jury hearings begin. Knowing full well what an investigation will reveal, Sheila and other key members desert the ranch for sanctuary in Europe. The grand jury begins to hear of plots to murder Devaraj, Rajneesh's personal physician, Oregon Attorney General Dave Frohnmeyer, and a list of other so-called enemies of the commune. Also uncovered is an attempt to poison the entire population of a city. Hoping to better their chances in a county election, Rajneeshis put poison in the city water supply of the Dalles, Oregon. When the attempt failed, they poured deadly salmonella virus into the food supply of local restaurants. Over 700 men, women, and children were stricken with the disease. Through secret sources, Rajneesh learns he's been indicted on charges of immigration fraud. He attempts to escape to the island of Bermuda. But in Charlotte, North Carolina, his luck runs out. He's arrested and thrown in jail. Rajneesh is returned to Oregon under heavy security. If convicted of all the charges against him, he will face 170 years in prison. Retirement to an Oregon jail is an uncomfortable prospect. After intense negotiations, the guru's attorney strikes a bargain with government prosecutors. Rajneesh will plead guilty to 2 of the charges and receive a 10-year suspended sentence. He is also fined $400,000 and ordered to leave the United States. He departs hurriedly and without ceremony. In Europe, Sheila and 2 co-conspirators are arrested and held for extradition on charges of immigration fraud, arson, and attempted murder. In Oregon, these commune leaders plead guilty to arranging over 400 fraudulent marriages. Krishna Deva, the former mayor of Rajneeshpuram, becomes a witness for the government. More Rajneesh crimes are revealed, and charges of racketeering are filed against them by the state of Oregon. As he did when he left India, Rajneesh has left his sannyasins behind to fend for themselves. Now, in the middle of winter, without money or leadership, commune members, the innocent as well as the guilty, must find a new place to live. These guard towers were once part of a complex perimeter defense system at the ranch. Today, there is nothing to defend. The ranch, the airplanes, and the guru's 93 Rolls-Royces, all are offered for sale. Paradise will be sold to the highest bidder. The little town of Rajneesh will once again be known as Antelope, but justice took a long time getting here. There are only 10 of the original residents left. On the outskirts of town, this prefabricated camp built by the Rajneeshis is for sale. Sheila had threatened to populate it with people infected with AIDS. Slowly, hopefully, Antelope and Oregon will return to normal. But Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh and his sannyasins are on the move, and there is talk of another Buddha-field city in a place where the group's criminal adventures are less well known. After Oregon, will the sannyasins continue to accept direction blindly?
He could tell them to do anything and they would do it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. It is right if they say it's right.
Fear and hate, guilt and paranoia, the unstable ingredients of mind control. In Berlin, in Jonestown, in Rajneeshpuram. Pushed to the wall in the future by the law, will Rajneesh finally follow in the destructive path of his predecessors? Will his egotistical desire for immortality demand the ultimate sacrifice? The master has given us a sly hint. In their final moments, both Hitler and Jones had themselves shot. Rajneesh has said, "When the proper time comes, I will do my best to see that someone or other shoots me." He shouldn't be hasty. I myself will arrange it. A bullet-ridden death can often accomplish what life could not. Will Rajneesh make his martyrdom a greater event by taking his sannyasins with him? He's already prepared them by promising instant enlightenment to anyone who dies within a 24-mile radius of him. It's clear the morality of the man-made God provides only one answer upon which we may depend.
All means are good if they fulfill the ends.
You will die. You will have to take anybody over all of our dead bodies.
Might is right.
He's more than God.
I only know I love him.
I do anything that he asks me to.
Pull the sword.
I would die for you right now, Dad.
I'm prepared to die for this family.
My people have nothing to lose.
You are in corpse.
Life is a joke.
In corpse.
I believe she'd blow you away in a heartbeat.
I got a hell of a lot of weapons to fight. I got guns. I got dynamite. I got a hell of a lot to fight.
All means are good if they fulfill the ends.